and sexual assault. And before getting started, I just wanted to cover a few items. A recorded version of this webinar will be available as we are recording live today. We have also emailed out today's handouts ahead of time. If you did not receive those yet, please message me in the chat box and I can get them to you. There will be time at the end of the session for any questions, and then we will also be sharing a link for you to fill out a quick evaluation at the end. We'd love for you to give us some feedback. And then I will be following up with everyone for attending, just to share a token of our gratitude with you. And now I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Mr. Bob Vines is a prevention specialist at the Wyoming Coalition based in Laramie, Wyoming. And Mr. Vines has been nationally recognized for his work towards ending sexual violence. And Strong Families, Strong Wyoming has had the wonderful opportunity to receive training from him in the past. So we are very thankful to have you joining us today. And I will now turn it over to you, Bob, so you can get started.
Hello, everyone. First off, thank you, Strong Family, Strong Wyoming, a great partnership we have with you and the coalition, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys again. So I am going to screen share here. And y'all can see that it's not my Bloom County wallpaper. Okay, so yeah, I work for the Wyoming Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault as a prevention specialist. Before that, I've been with the coalition for about a year. Before that, I worked in the Washakie County Attorney's office as a victim advocate and witness coordinator. And so that's that's kind of my background. Before that, I was a journalist back when journalists existed. And now we've just kind of moved on to a different place, right? So I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited about this work. A lot of my work is about engaging men and boys in violence prevention, but I also do a lot of stuff about teen intimate partner violence too. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So yeah, today I thought we would take a look at what makes healthy relationships and what makes unhealthy relationships. The age group we're going to be focusing on is 14 to 24, but the signs are the same regardless of age, as far as what the healthy behaviors and unhealthy behaviors look like. We'll then work our way backwards to look at how a child's environment can influence unhealthy and or violent behavior later in life. So we'll start with talking about what love is and where abuse comes from. Then we'll talk about the signs of a healthy relationship and unhealthy relationships. These are things that we may see in ourselves or in the relationships of loved ones or our friends. Then we'll try to define gaslighting. That's a term that's been getting a lot of play these days. And it does play a huge role in abusive behavior. And then we're going to discuss the effects exposures to violence can have on a young brain and how that may lead to future health and relationship issues. Finally, we'll talk about what we can do to combat these influences by building resilience through protective factors. So a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today as far as healthy relationships comes from One Love Foundation. The One Love Foundation was founded because of the death of Yardley Love in 2010. She was a senior at the University of Virginia. She was a lacrosse star. Excuse me. She was murdered by an ex-boyfriend while she was in the process of getting out of the abusive relationship. Her family and friends noticed throughout the whole process of going through a trial and that they realized that the warning signs were there. It was in hindsight obvious that Yardley needed help. But the people that were around her, the friends and and her family just did not see it. So they have focused their training on identifying those healthy behaviors in a relationship, and also those unhealthy behaviors in a relationship, not just so to help young people know what kind of situation they're in, but also for their friends and family to be able to identify and provide supports and interventions if they feel that someone they are close to is going through such a situation. So their curriculum is based around the idea that love is learned. We grew up learning that love is a feeling. We watched it on screen. We heard about it in our rom-coms, but there's so much we didn't learn, and we're left to figure it all out on our own. The truth is, we can all learn to love better. Love is a skill, and it takes practice. So let's talk about abuse. So this right here is the power and control wheel. I don't know if you guys have seen this before. It was developed a long time ago. This is called the Duluth model. It was designed in Duluth, Minnesota, by the Domestic Abuse Intervention Project. Over several months, they conducted focus groups of batterers and survivors. After hearing all the stories, they documented the most common abusive behaviors or tactics that were used against these girls and women. The tactics chosen for the wheel were those that are the most universally experienced by victims of abuse. It's called the power and control wheel because abusing is one form of intimate partner violence. It is characterized by the pattern of actions that an individual uses to intentionally control or dominate his intimate partner. That is why the words power and control are at the center of the wheel. The abuser systemically uses threats, intimidation, and coercion to instill fear in his partner. These behaviors are the spokes of the wheel. Physical and sexual violence holds it all together. That's the rim of the wheel. The most important thing to remember about the power and control wheel is the center of power and control, because that is at the base of all abuse, whether it's intimate partner abuse, stalking, domestic violence, whether it's racism, homophobia, all the isms. It's all about power and control. It's about holding power over someone else. And it's about the fear of losing power. So I've got a video we're going to watch. This is actually from One Love. We'll watch this video and take a look at some of the messages that come through it, and then we'll talk about how that falls into the power and control wheel.
Because I love you. I want to be your only guy.
Because I love you, skip class with me. Let's stay in bed today.
Because I love you, I just want to be with you so freaking much. Because I love you.
I waited for you after Chem Lab.
You were walking with Mark?
Because I love you.
You shouldn't be hanging out with that dude.
You should know how dumb that makes me look. I don't care if she's your lab partner.
Why do you have texts from him?
Because I love you. This number, delete.
Because I love you. This Jason number,
Delete.
And Ben,
Delete.
because I love you, I should smash your phone.
I'll let you give me your password instead. Because I love you.
I will check your texts every day.
You got lucky. Because I love you. Because I love you.
You think it's okay?
Because I love you. You understand.
Because I love you, you stop talking to your classmates. And you feel completely alone.
Because I love you. That's not love.
So we'll go back to the power and control wheel. There was a lot of things that popped up in that video. Did anyone have a reaction to it that you would like to share?
I'll go. I thought it was interesting that it started out with some basic, simple kind of guilt tactics and then worked all the way up to smashing the phone. So it kind of started out with the smaller acts up to the more violent act in escalation.
And that's typically how abusive relationships begin. So there's a few things on the power and control wheel that we witnessed there. As Kelsey pointed out, threatening to smash things, that's under intimidation. So that's one of the factors we saw in there. There's also emotional abuse, putting the abusee down, making her feel bad about herself, calling her names, guilting her, like was pointed out. Also, isolation. Isolation is controlling what she does, who she sees and talks to, and what she reads and where she goes. Isolation can be all sorts of different things. In Wyoming, it can be very literal too, with our rural nature. Isolation could possibly very much mean living in a trailer house 15 miles out of town and not having any contact with anybody. So there's never an opportunity to see the warning signs. Nobody's there to see the black eyes, correct? So there's some other abuses here, minimizing and denying and blaming. We see that a lot with, especially when I was working in the courts, and a lot of the people that were arrested for domestic violence would always try to find a way to turn it back on the victim by saying, I was only trying to protect myself, or I'm trying to protect yourself from you. Using children, we'll talk a little bit about that under gaslighting as well. This one is, in my opinion, it's kind of diabolical. It's using the children to gain leverage. It's also using them to control power and to keep the victim quiet, right? Because they'll say things like, if the state found out that you allowed this to happen to the kids, then they'll take them away from you. I've heard that several times from victims that I've worked with. There's economic abuse. That one's very important too. I had somebody I worked with who told me once that she's had the same $12 in her account for 5 years. And that's really stuck with me, because that just goes to show that, without money, these people can't get out of these situations. And of course, there's male privilege. We see that a lot also with our young people, acting like the master of the castle, being the one to define men's and women's roles. And finally, coercion and threats. We saw a little bit of that in the video as well. Carrying out threats. It may be a little bit more subtle, but threats of hurting them. Also, threats of suicide is also a tactic that's used by abusers quite a bit. So let's talk about the 10 signs of a healthy relationship first. And again, this information is coming from One Love. The first sign is a comfortable pace. Feeling comfortable enough with your partner to have open and honest communication about how the relationship moves forward. Secondly is honesty. Honesty is that you feel comfortable enough to share your opinions without having that feeling that you're walking on eggshells, or you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You can just be truthful and candid about how you feel. Respect, of course. Your partner values you, your beliefs, and your opinions. Number 4 is kindness. Your partner knows how to show they care about you and your comfort. Healthy conflict, as opposed to just conflict, right? This is when you're able to have those discussions about disagreements without yelling, without aggression, without gaslighting, without punching holes in walls, right? So the 6th sign is trust. You know your partner isn't going to do anything to sabotage the relationship. Independence. Your partner allows you space. Equality, that the relationship is 50-50. It's balanced. Taking responsibility for owning up for your mistakes, and allowing your partner to do the same. Finally, maybe the most important one is fun. Is the relationship still fun, especially with our younger people? When the relationship stops being fun and starts being work, then they really need to consider where that relationship is heading. It should be, especially when you're young, it should be fun. So let's talk about the 10 signs of unhealthy relationships. Now, the first one is intensity. That's the pushing the relationship at a pace that's just uncomfortable. They're way too serious and overreactive to situations. The second one is guilting. We've talked about that a little bit already. You know, I think of guilting as you make me statements, right? Like you make me crazy. You make me feel this way. Nobody makes anybody feel anyway. That's on themselves. But turning it back, your feelings, turning it back on your partner is guilty. Sabotage. So sabotage comes from a very selfish place. It's the whole they're bringing you down to elevate themselves. Sabotage can also include friends and family manipulation. And then there's manipulation. That's when somebody tries to control your decisions and all aspects of your life. Number 5 is deflecting responsibility. That's, when you blames others for situations beyond their control or their own behavior. Possessiveness, total control of your time and who you spend time with. First goes the friends, then goes the family. And then pretty soon that's all you have is the abuser. Next is isolation. We already talked a little bit about this. It can be physical isolation. It could be financial isolation. There's a huge power and control tactic that plays a role in this. And we see it a lot, especially working with rural victims. Isolation can be, very much logistic. Number 8 is belittling. Comments like, don't be stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. Or I'm just joking, grow a sense of humor. And just saying things and doing things that just make your partner feel bad. Volatility. That's when reactions don't match the situation. When the partner becomes very angry, might punch walls, yells, screams, usually immediately followed by apologies and deflecting. I'm sorry, but sometimes you just drive me so crazy. And finally, it's betrayal. And of course, that's cheating and lying, right? Not really having respect for the relationship to continue to have it honestly. That's a lot of information. That was like 20 things I just threw at you. So now I'm going to be really unfair and make you watch a video and then like repeat all the stuff I just told you. You guys like that part, I'm sure. 1 second. These are little vignettes, I think they call them. And at the bottom, you'll see actually the 10 signs of unhealthy relationships. So we'll watch one of these little vignettes and then we'll discuss what kind of behavior we're seeing.
Want to come over tonight?
I got plans, but maybe tomorrow?
Sure thing. Want to come over tonight?
I got plans.
You will come over.
No, I won't.
You will.
I won't.
You will.
All right. What did we see there?
Possessiveness?
Absolutely. There is a couple in there actually. Possessiveness is one. Manipulation.
Intensity.
Intensity, yeah. Volatility, maybe, the anger. Yeah. Here's the next one.
I gotta go. I got class. Sure thing. Have fun. I gotta go. I got class. Can we stop holding hands now? No, seriously, can we stop holding hands now?
How about that one?
Definitely some possessiveness.
It
Show us
could,
the
it
photos.
could lead to isolation, but this case is
Showing
just,
them my booty pics.
Show us more photos. Sweet.
What? You're showing them my booty pics?
I'm sorry, I think somebody was talking, but I already hit play. Did I cut somebody off?
that's okay. I was kind of mentioning maybe isolation. We don't see them refusing and totally isolating, but just not letting go. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what about the one about the foodie pics versus the booty pics? You know, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just saying maybe betrayal.
Yeah. Man, it is scary what kids are doing now. As far as sharing these pics in school. This is like, you know, I started hearing about it a lot when I was working with direct victim services, that this is like an introduction for some kids nowadays, is asking for you know, the pictures. And when I was working with a lot of the kids through the sports coaches and stuff, one of the questions that always kept popping up is it illegal for a minor to have nude pictures of a minor? Which is a scary question. And yeah, the answer is yes, it is now, but only as of a few years ago. I think 3 years ago, the state passed that law.
I'd be sad if we broke up. I'd be sad too. I'd be so depressed if we ever broke up. I'd throw myself off the step. I would. Don't try to stop me.
And she's going to throw herself off the step. What behaviors did you see in that one?
Manipulation.
Yep. Maybe intensity as well.
Yep.
I haven't seen you in a couple of days. I've missed you.
Aw, I missed you too.
I haven't seen you in 5 minutes. It feels like a lifetime. What have you been doing for 5 whole minutes?
It's been 3 minutes.
How about that one?
Some intensity.
Mm-hmm. Maybe,
Possessiveness.
yes, absolutely, Tammy. Possessiveness, intensity.
What are you so happy about? She just started following me on Instagram.
What are you so nervous about?
She just started following me like everywhere.
How about that one?
intensity.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Maybe a little possessiveness too. Really love these little vignettes because these really speak to young people in their relationships nowadays. I think that this is definitely something that they can relate to. So I want to show another video here. This was produced by One Love. They set up a Valentine's store and they did it in a very creative way to teach a lesson about healthy relationships.
I feel like my heart hurts a little bit for people who think that that's what love is. Loving is hard, and it's hard to know when you're not in a good relationship. some more?
Shut up.
Oh.
I'm sorry. That wasn't the real me. I hate you.
Okay, I think that's fair.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean that.
I love you. I'm so glad that you did.
This is horrible. Is that the tracker? Oh, that is true.
I felt that it was insanely relatable. Every little emotion or feeling or I felt all of those before.
I used to be overweight, and when I saw like the chocolate, it triggered something in me.
I actually had an ex who had find my iPhone password.
We're intense this. I know.
This experience was impactful because I believe that a lot of people do not know like what it is like to love. Like we're not taught how to love.
I'm excited to go home and talk to my partner now.
I think when we really listen to each other, we can love each other better.
Hey, any reactions to that video? I find it interesting how things are so much more clear in hindsight. You can recognize these behaviors once you're no longer in the situation. And that kind of goes along with at least my experiences working with victims of domestic violence. When it's all over and it's in the rearview mirror, it becomes so very clear. The thing is, though, is that those relationship behaviors are more clear to the people that are close to you. And that's one of the reasons why isolating you, abusers isolate their victims as quickly as possible, because they know that other people are going to see that things are not all rosy, and they want to avoid that circle, that support of their victim to come forward and say, hey, look, you need to be careful here. So next, let's talk about gaslighting. This seems like such a new term, doesn't it? It just seems like this is something that's just popped up over the last year or something. It's actually been around for a while. As a matter of fact, the term comes from a movie that was made like in 1929, where the main character just basically drove his partner insane by just denying everything that she saw as reality and changing her reality. So Dr. Robin Stern, who wrote The Gaslight Effect, put a definition to it, and that's the systemic attempt by one person to erode another person's reality by telling them that what they are experiencing isn't so, and the gradual giving up on the part of the other person. There's a lot of signs for gaslighting to be aware of, and a lot of these same signs relate to the behaviors we've already discussed as far as unhealthy relationships go. So Dr. Stephanie Sarkis, she wrote a book called Gaslighting: Recognize Manipulative and Emotionally Abusive People and Break Free. And she identified the characteristics of a gaslighter. And when we go through these, think about where you see this in. You might see it in the media. You might see it in the news. You might see it on social media. And you might see it in the relationships of, I don't know, your students or people you may know. And this is a very important piece of the abuse puzzle, because these things are kind of central to emotional abuse. So the first thing they do is they tell blatant lies. You know it's a lie. It's an outright lie. yet they are telling you this lie with a straight face. Why are they so blatant? Because they're setting you up as a precedence. They're setting a precedence for you. Once they tell you a huge lie, you're not sure if anything they say is true. So that kind of keeps you unsteady and off kilter, and that's their goal. They deny they ever said something, even though there's proof. They deny, you know that they said it, or that they told you that they would do something, and you know that you heard it, but they out and out deny it. It makes you start questioning your own reality, like we talked about. Maybe they never said that thing, and more so, actually, the more they do it, the more you question your own reality and start accepting theirs. They use what is near and dear to you as ammunition. For younger people, this could be sports or some sort of activity. They criticize you about your basketball play. They tell you that you're not as good of a singer as you think you are. And when you start getting older, this really pertains a lot to children. They know how important your kids are to you, and they know how important your identity is to you. So those may be one of the first things that they attack. If you have kids, they tell you that you shouldn't have had those kids, or they tell you that you'd be a worthy person if only you didn't have such a long list of all these negative traits. They attack the foundation of your being. Whatever is important to you, they go after. They wear you down. I'm sorry, you get those notices pop up right at the worst time. So yeah, they wear you down, and this is one of the insidious things about gaslighting. It's done so gradually over time, just a little lie here and a little lie there, and then it starts ramping up. Even the brightest, most self-aware people can be sucked into gaslighting. It's that effective. You know, that analogy of a frog in a frying pan, how you turn the heat up just a little bit at a time and the frog never knows it's getting cooked. That's kind of how this works. How they just wear you down over time. I'm sorry, there we go. Their actions do not match their words. When dealing with a person or entity that gaslights, look at what they are doing rather than what they are saying. What they're saying means absolutely nothing. Remember, they're liars, so it's just talk. What they are doing is what the issue is. They throw a positive reinforcement at you to confuse you. This person that is cutting you down all the time is always telling you that you don't have value, is all of a sudden praising you for something you did. This adds an additional sense of uneasiness. You think, well, maybe they aren't so bad. This is a calculated attempt to keep you off kilter. And again, to question your reality. Also look at what you were being praised for. More than likely, it's something that served the gaslighter. They know that confusion weakens people. Gaslighters know that people like having a sense of stability and normalcy. Their goal is to uproot this and make you constantly question everything. Human natural tendency is to look to the person or entity that will help you feel more stable, and that happens to be the gaslighter. They project. They may be a drug user or they may be a cheater, yet they're constantly accusing you of that behavior. This is done so often that you start trying to defend yourself, and you're distracted from the gaslighter's own behavior. Another terrible thing that gaslighters do is that they try to align people against you, especially your family and friends. They are masters at manipulating and finding the people that they know will stand by them no matter what. and they use these people against you. They'll make comments such as, this person knows that you're not right, or this person knows that you're useless. Keep in mind that does not mean that these people actually said those things. You have to remember that a gaslighter is a liar. When the gaslighter uses this tactic, it makes you feel like you don't know who to trust or turn to. And that leads you right back to the gaslighter because they have all the answers. And that's exactly what they want. That isolation gives them power and control. And finally, I guess we got a couple more here. They tell you that others, they tell you or others that you are crazy. This is one of the most effective tools of the gaslighter because it's dismissive. The gaslighter knows if they question your sanity, people will not believe you when you tell them the gaslighter is abusive or out of control. It's a master technique. They tell you everyone else is a liar. By telling you that everyone else, including your family or even the media, is lying to you, it again makes you question your own reality. You've never known someone with this audacity to do this, so they must be telling the truth, right? That's not true. It's a manipulation technique. It makes people turn to the gaslighter for the correct information, which isn't correct information at all. So let's go back here just 1 second. Any comments on gaslighting? I mean, we've been hearing this term so much lately. And actually, to be honest with you, I was talking all my important stuff to my wife one time, and she called me on the carpet. She asked me to define gaslighting. And this was about 5 months ago, and I just couldn't. I just stumbled over it. It was one of those deals where it's like, well, I know it if I saw it, right? So you just kind of have to go and research and make sure that you know what you're talking about. Does anybody have any comment? Have you seen gaslighting, or do you have any examples of gaslighting that you've recently seen?
I appreciate the story you just told, and I know it's a part of the materials we get from Strong Family, Strong Wyoming, that individuals can have definitions to describe what's happening to them. And that's really important in all the materials you've provided us. And I really appreciate the definitions you just gave us. I think they would be really valuable to our young people.
Thank you.
What would be kind of some of those steps, like if I can recognize one of my students as being gaslit or is gaslighting someone, what can I do if they don't listen to that? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. You try to help somebody, you try to do an intervention, and they're just not listening to you, or they don't believe you. Is that what you're?
Yeah, when I think about like abuse, when it comes to that I've known of around me throughout my life, it really does seem like you say something. Like I had a friend in high school, for example, who her boyfriend acted a lot like that and did some of these techniques. And when you say that to her, she's like, no, or makes excuses or whatnot. Like, how can we help those students who are in those situations if they're almost unwilling or unknowing of how to take that knowledge? If they're being told this alternate reality, they don't know how to accept that this is happening.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, isn't it? If you push too much, then you actually will start pushing them deeper into isolation, right? It's very difficult. And of course, every situation is different. But as long as you have the material and the information, all you can really do is supply it and hope that there's other people in that person's life that's doing the same. And I think that's kind of the focus of One Love is, it's casting a broad net, get as much information out there to as many people. So when they see it, they can bring attention to it. Now, that student may not listen to you, but would that student listen to you and one of their friends? Maybe not. 3, 4 of their friends and their mom and you, maybe they start listening. But yeah, I understand what you're talking about, because it's dangerous to have these, or it's uncomfortable to have these conversations with young people, because you run the risk of pushing them deeper into the abuse and the abusive
Right.
relationship. Yeah, and so really all you can do, you've got to try, though. You've got to provide them with the information, provide them with resources. Be careful how you approach it. You're better off saying, you know, I've noticed this type of behavior. I'm really concerned about you. Here's this website if you have an opportunity to take a look at it. That might help. That might allow them to understand that you're there for them and that you're part of their circle, and that they will approach you. It may not be the very next day. And that's the hard part. It's the hardest part about watching someone suffer that you care about, is when they just won't listen to you. But you got to keep trying.
Right. Well, thank you.
All right, let's talk about, we're going back even further now. Now we're going back to trying to identify why some people abuse, or why some people find themselves in abusive situations. And this by no means is 100%, because every situation is different. But the more we learn about the effects of being around domestic violence for children, the more we understand that, you know, kids use modeling, and you're running a risk of creating more issues the older they get without intervention. So violence witnessed is violence experienced, right? Futures Without Violence says that 15 million US children each year witness domestic violence. Witnessing abuse carries the same risk of harm to children, to their mental health, as learning, and learning as being abused directly. That's what we mean by violence witnessed is violence experienced. This creates traumas that can be opened up again in adulthood. You know, it's the same type of PTSD that accompanies war veterans. It's the same. It's the same cut cloth of the same type of trauma that will just come back and come back to you at different times in your life. Children's from homes where domestic violence is present are 7 times more likely to be physically abused. They're 6 times more likely to be sexually abused as well. Boys are more likely to become abusers because they model the behaviors that they witness as they grow up. It's important to understand, though, that there's a huge number of abused children that do not grow up to become abusers. They actually learn the lessons, and they do the opposite of modeling. They say to themselves that they will not be that person when they grow up. And that's a real tough thing to overcome. But it's also very important to understand that not all abused children grow up to be abusers. They still have trauma, and it manifests in different ways. Girls are more likely to find themselves in abusive relationships if they grow up in an abusive relationship or an abusive house, because they do not learn what healthy relationships look like. I had somebody that I provided services for. She was abused by every man in her life. She was abused by her father, by her grandfather, by 2 different spouses, by her son. She was even beaten pretty brutally by a patient that she was a nurse to. And by the time that she came to my office, she was done. She just didn't understand, couldn't believe that there would ever be a relationship that she could have that was healthy. And it was really, really a sad situation. So here's another thing. Batterers are more likely to fight for custody of children. It's a power and control dynamic. When they control the children, they control the situation. More than 650 children were killed by a parent in a divorce, separation, custody, visitation, or child support situation between the years of 2008 and 2018. I've seen that a lot with my work. The the first thing that the abuser goes for is to claim that the mother cannot take care of the children. And they try to get custody of those children. And that's not a healthy situation for anyone involved. So let's talk about ACEs. How many people on this call feel they have an understanding of adverse childhood experiences? There's probably a few. Probably most of us have heard about it, but really maybe don't understand the science behind it or how it manifests. That might be a possibility as well. So, children who have witnessed traumatic events can develop traumatic stress that in time can impact their physical and emotional health. Adverse childhood experiences, they can be direct, where the child is the victim, or they can be indirect, where the child is a witness. And again, it makes no difference if it's the same effect on their brain, whether they witness it or they are the recipient of it. Children who suffer from child traumatic stress as a result of exposure to one or more forms of violence or neglect may develop unhealthy responses that continue to affect their lives long after the events pass. Continued exposure to traumatic experiences activates a child's flight, or freeze stress response system, causing a release of chemicals and stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol, and an increase in heart rate and blood pressure. The release of these chemicals serves a purpose. It allows instinct to take over and it triggers a defensive response. It's basically what has kept us from getting eaten by larger animals for millennia, right? So this is a good thing if you are in that situation. But every time those chemicals are released, they create damage to the brain, especially a brain that is still developing. So there's an analogy we hear a lot in when we're talking about adverse childhood experiences. It's about running into a bear in the woods, right? So you're walking down a path in the woods and you run across a bear. Now, all these chemicals are going on in your brain right now. You have no control over your body. Your body's taken over. It may tell you to fight the bear. It may tell you to run away from the bear, or in most cases, it'll tell you to freeze. And that's, scared, frozen. That's kind of what the term means. You are frozen. So that is how these chemicals work in our system to try to protect us from danger. Now, if you can imagine what it's like for a child that lives in an abusive home. Now imagine running into that bear on a weekly basis or a daily basis, or you're just always trying to avoid that bear. And that is kind of what the effects of being in an abusive household has on young kids. The more children are exposed to traumatic stress, the more those neural connections are created in regions of the brain involving fear, anxiety, impulsiveness, and it also produces in regions involving reasoning, planning, and behavior control. All this creates wear and tear on multiple organ systems, not just the brain. It can lead to long-term behavioral and physiological disorders. It can lead to depression, drug abuse, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, stroke, certain cancers, autoimmune diseases, and the list just goes on and on and on. Many times this toxic stress will create what is called paper tigers for children. They're so used to fighting real tigers in their home life that they have a difficult time distinguishing legitimate threats from imagined threats. So you might see these kids and their reaction to a situation just doesn't match the situation at all. And those kids are fighting paper tigers. They just can't understand the difference, right? We've all seen a child react inappropriately to a situation. And I'm sure at some time in all of our lives, we couldn't help but to think to ourselves and take a look at that child and think, what the hell's wrong with you, right? There's got to be something wrong. Why are you freaking out like this? So what we would like to do is to try to change that dialogue a little bit. We want to change it from what is wrong with you to what happened to you, because more than likely that is a trauma response. And being trauma informed means you have the ability to take a step back in those situations and think to yourself, you know, what happened to this child? So the ACEs questions, I sent them along. We're not going to go through them today. I've noticed that it can actually have trigger responses for some. I know the first time that I took the test, it was almost an emotional situation because it answered so many questions. You know, it was very strange. And I would urge you to take a look at it if you want, or if you don't, that's fine too. Each of the 10 questions on the ACEs test are reflected on this slide right here. Like there's a question about physical abuse. That question is, have you ever been hit so hard that it left a mark? One of the questions under neglect is, have you ever had the feeling that your parents couldn't take care of you, or you weren't getting enough to eat, something like that? Household dysfunction. Has anybody in your home suffered from mental illness? Incarcerated, have been incarcerated? Was their mother treated violently? That's where we're talking about being exposed to domestic violence. Substance abuse, of course, and divorce. You know, most of the people that were part of the original study had experienced at least one experience, but those that experienced 4 or more were at a significant risk for suicide attempts, depression, drug abuse, alcoholism. For those that reported witnessing their mother's abuse, there was substantial increase in each of the same areas, as well as an increased risk for physical abuse, mental health issues, and substance abuse. For those that experience 6 or more adverse childhood experiences, their lifespan is 20 years less than the peers that have experienced 1 or less. That's 20 years off your life because of the way you were raised or in the environment that you were raised. So these are some of the behaviors. And if you notice, I look at these, I'm like, well, yeah, of course that makes sense. You know, if you lack physical activity, you're going to definitely be susceptible to obesity. If you're obese, you're going to be susceptible to diabetes, right? If you grew up in a house that drank and smoked, you're more likely to drink and smoke. And you're more likely to miss work if you drink, right? It's all related. But these are the types of behaviors, and it gets more serious if you notice the farther you go down. It creates heart disease because those chemicals start damaging your system at a very, very young age, and put unhealthy behaviors on top of that, right? So you're already starting behind the ball a little bit. So you pick up smoking, you start drinking, you're dealing with depression, and that creates just a high risk for some of these things like heart disease and certain types of cancers, stroke, COPD, of course, even broken bones. So that's the bad news. Bad news is that you can't change somebody's adverse childhood experience score. That's theirs. They're going to keep it forever, and they're going to have to deal with it forever. The good news is that children are also resilient, and we can provide a foundation of resilience by providing protective factors. The most important protective factor is you or me or us, adults. The child's brain is so spongy and malleable that supportive adults can help to prevent or even reverse damage. Evidence of how exposure to traumatic and toxic stress and violence can negatively impact a child's life is overwhelming. But fostering stable, supportive relationships can have a lifelong benefit to a child's learning, their behavior, and overall health. Science and research have repeatedly shown that consistently caring adult in the life of a child is one of the most important protective factors toward helping a child heal and build resilience. So that's the important part. There's a reason why mentor programs like Big Brothers Big Sisters work, and that is because they are providing this protective factor in these children's lives, and just having an adult in their life that cares about their well-being, that asks about their well-being, significantly increases their ability to become resilient and make it to adulthood without having to carry all the baggage of a high ACE score. I've got a little video here to show. It is about what resilience is. And this is from the folks at the Child Alliance. I'll figure that one out. I'm actually a member, so I'm really embarrassed that I'm forgetting the name of these guys. So we'll just watch the video.
Why do some people do well despite serious hardships? The science of resilience can help us find answers.
We define resilience as a good outcome in the face of adversity. The extent to which we can build capacities in all children early in their lives to be able to deal with whatever bumps in the road or major obstacles may be coming down the track. That's an investment in building strong human capital, healthy, productive adults.
Some children face more obstacles and adversity than others.
Like having a parent with a major mental illness, growing up in a very socioeconomically disadvantaged community, going to schools that are not good, being exposed to violence in the neighborhood or in the home.
But some children do well despite these significant obstacles.
Resilience is that ability or a set of capacities for positive adaptation, allowing you to keep in balance.
We're talking about the kinds of capacities and skills and the abilities that give people a sense of mastery and management of difficulty.
It's tempting to think about children as either having this resilient quality or not. But resilience is built over time, just as and in parallel with how the architecture of the brain is built over time.
It's not just in the person, it's in the interaction between the person and the environment.
So we care about resilience for the same reason that we care about promoting healthy development, because in many respects it is the same. We are interested in promoting resilience in children so that, despite the odds, more and more children can grow up to be productive citizens.
Okay, I'm just going to go over these real quickly because we're just about out of time. The Children's Trust Fund Alliance is what I was trying to think of before. They've identified 5 major protective factors for families. Now, this was training that's specifically for social workers and counselors. And just real quickly, some of those included parental resilience, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, concrete support in times of need, and social and emotional competency of children. I sent this, you have this in your email as well. They have descriptions of each of these. You know, when mothers are able to model effective coping and convey a sense of security and confidence in their children, there is an increased likelihood of better functioning and managing of stress by that child. And with that, I want to leave you guys with another video. I'll be available for questions after this, but this is a great video that really shines light on coping skills and how those coping skills, it doesn't matter your age, they're all the same.
I get really mad when my brother hits me a lot. I don't like it when you say you don't want to play with me. When I'm mad, my brain can get a headache and it can start hurting. Your blood keeps pumping because you're like really mad. And you start to get sweaty because you're getting really, really mad. And then when you start getting really mad, you turn red. When your body can't really control yourself, mad just takes over your body. I just get out of control. It's kind of like if you had a jar, and then the jar would be your brain, and then you put glitter in the jar, and that would be how you would feel. If you shook up the jar and the glitter went everywhere, that would be how your mind looks. And it's like spinning around, and then you don't have any time to think. And you sometimes punch stuff and people when you don't really mean it. When I get angry, I feel it in my heart. I really don't like when I get angry. The amygdala really reacts, but the prefrontal cortex tries to keep it down. When I feel like I want to, get really angry and yell, I just sometimes, take deep breaths. First you find a place where you can be alone, then you find some way to relax and calm down. When I need to calm down, I take deep breaths. I breathe in through my nose. Sometimes I close my eyes or just take deep breaths. It's calming down, it's not moving. It's slowing down and then it stops. And the heart pumps slow and then it goes into your brain. It's like all the sparkles are at the bottom of your brain. My brain slows down and then I feel more calm and then I'm ready to speak to that person.
Okay. All right. So I'm at the hour. I'm actually past the hour. I apologize for going over. I hate not allowing enough time for questions. I could stick on, but I understand if people have to go, if Kelsey and Jackie have to go, I understand that as well too. Or you have my email right there. It's bvines@wyomingdvsa.org if you have any follow-up questions you would like, or any information that maybe we talked about, but I did not supply you with. I can provide other information to you as well too. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was a lot of great videos you shared today, so we really appreciate it. If you want to put your email to, oh, never mind. I was going to say put it in the chat box, but I think it's fine right there. I do have the eval link for everyone. If you have a minute or two to quickly fill out for us, that's in the chat box. It should be clickable for everyone. And it looks like we do have a question for you, Bob. Are they able to get those video links?
Yes. Yeah, I can send them out to you. A lot of them are on YouTube now. If you go to the website that they might have a protection on it, but you can actually pull them up off of YouTube. It might just be easier if I just sent you the links, since I've kind of already embedded them without the advertisements. So yeah, if you want to email me, ask for whatever videos you would like, specifically, and I'll just send them to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
My favorite's that last one. I love that one. It still kind of chokes me up sometimes when I see it.
Bob, would you be willing to kind of just create a list with all the links? And then we'll just send them out to all of our teachers so that you're not getting a whole bunch of different emails, and we can just handle that situation and give them out to everybody.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just email them to you.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate that. We are happy to stay on if there's any other questions. If not, I think Kelsey's put the survey link into the chat box. If you guys wouldn't mind completing that before you go, we would appreciate it. And we also have this video or this meeting recorded as well. So we can, if you're interested in rewatching it or sending it on to somebody else, we can definitely send it to you as well. Just let us know. Kelsey, I don't know if you have anything to close us out, but Bob, thank you very much. That was a lot of really great information, and we definitely appreciate your time in putting all this together.
Thank you. I love visiting with you guys.
Yes, thank you. That was a lot of great information you shared. We always enjoy having you do a session with us.
Thank
All
you.
right. And with that, I think we will be closing out. So thank you everyone for attending today. Have a good rest of your Tuesday.
Bye, everybody.